Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about one of gaming's most iconic characters ever, the blue blur Sonic the Hedgehog. I'll be specifically talking about modern Sonic for this, so that's post Sonic 06 until today, with some sprinkling of adventure era and classic feats as well. I'll be talking about how fast he is, how powerful he is, and all of his unique abilities. In addition, I'll also be covering Super Sonic. Now, I've wanted to make this video for a good while, and the main reason I've wanted to cover Sonic in particular is that there is very little true power scaling coverage of Sonic on YouTube at all. Most of what I see is A, poorly researched garbage, which is either massively downplaying Sonic's abilities or massively exaggerating them to nonsensical levels, or just B, pop power scaling like, oh, Sonic could defeat this guy and this guy's as big as a skyscraper. No, but in this video I'm going to be giving as much info as possible. You will have to bear with me if I missed something. This character has decades of appearances at this point among many different forms of media now. Speaking of which, I will unfortunately not be covering anything from Sonic Prime or the comics. This is mainly because I don't know enough about them and it would decrease the quality of the video if I went into it blind, though I am aware that they are both canon. But with that, let's start with base Sonic. Now, usually if I were to go over a character, I would probably start with their attack potency or their power, as it's generally the most exciting aspect. But come on, we're talking about the fastest thing alive here. We have to start with speed. There are a huge number of incredibly impressive speed feats for Sonic the Hedgehog in his modern run. Literally at the beginning of Sonic 06, he completely outscales everything that Super Sonic previously did in Sonic Adventure and before. Before 06, Eggman's most powerful mech ever was the Super Egg Robot that appeared in Sonic Advance, which Super Sonic was able to combat and defeat. But in Sonic 06, we get so many statements of Eggman just making far better mechs than he ever has before. Take this one from the Japanese Sonic 06 website, which translates the bottom line: this time he confronts Sonic and his friends with mechs even more monstrous than before. If we want to go further than this, we can. In the Sonic 06 Prima Guide, we have this excerpt on the Egg Cerberus. The Egg Cerberus is one of Dr. Eggman's most terrible creations. The Egg Wyvern has a similar and even more impressive statement. The Madman sits down in his most terrifying creation, the Egg Wyvern. Note, most terrifying creation. That means it would be better than the Super Egg Robot, definitively. And this isn't even counting anything about Sonic himself. On the Sonic 06 European website, and I quote, Dr. Eggman will be unprepared for Sonic's vastly enhanced abilities and speed, and it's pretty easy to believe that, as Sonic absolutely wasted all three of Dr. Eggman's mechs in this game. Now, I'm very aware that we haven't gone over a single speed feat yet. However, I did want us all to be on the same page about modern Sonic at the beginning of his run being vastly above every previous appearance of Super Sonic. With this knowledge, we can now talk about Super Sonic's best feat of the adventure era, which was in Sonic Advance 3. In this game, Super Sonic travels to non-aggression in about 6 seconds. In essence, this is Super Sonic flying towards an entirely different nebula from where he previously was on Earth. The user 789 and Mephistus did a calculation for this, and they came out with a staggering 7.06 billion times the speed of light. And yes, modern Sonic just scales above this, and when you consider that a lot of people used to say, and perhaps still do, say that Sonic is like faster than the speed of sound, yeah, this is just absolutely extraordinary. But Sonic has always been faster than light speed. This is nothing new. Even in Adventure, we have a Japanese guide stating that he can instantaneously reach the speed of light. So going 7.06 billion times the speed of light is not outrageous whatsoever. This is impressive, of course, but seemingly a bit mundane. After all, we're talking about a character that's often called the fastest thing alive, and there are many characters in fiction who can go many millions of times the speed of light, and some that are just way above even finite speed. However, our old friend Sonic would not have to wait very long to break entirely out of finite speed and straight into infinite speed scaling. No, I did not stutter. Infinite speed. Literally in Sonic and the Secret Rings, about a year after 06, Sonic traverses an area called the Night Palace and meets a corridor which expands. But this corridor isn't just expanding a lot. It's expanding into infinity, as stated by the Sonic and the Secret Rings guide. As the magic carpet lands at an entrance, the crystal corridor ahead warps into an infinite space. So yeah, Sonic is running through an infinite corridor multiple times in the same level. If you thought the previous feat I described was outrageous, yeah, this is incomprehensibly above the speed level that Sonic demonstrated in any of his prior appearances. Most of the characters I pictured on screen earlier wouldn't even be able to see him move. That's how fast Sonic is as of Secret Rings. So between the end of the Adventure era and then from 06 to Secret Rings, that's two massive leaps up in Sonic's speed. What's next? What, he's gonna become faster than time or something? Oh wait, that's exactly what happens. In Sonic Generations, how do I put this? Basically the entire game is an immeasurable speed feat, courtesy of Sonic being able to move in white space. The Time Eater basically destroys all of space-time, reducing reality to a white void, and yet Sonic is actually capable of moving in it. Now, on its own, I'd be a little bit skeptical about this feat. There have been numerous examples across fiction of plot contrivancy where characters like moving in non-existent spaces where their regular speed wouldn't allow them to. But when Tails says that the Sonics accelerate through time to fix space, returning color and life, yeah, I think the evidence is really strong for immeasurable speed Sonic. I mean, he literally is stated to accelerate through time, which is basically the definition of immeasurable speed. And for those who aren't aware, immeasurable speed just means you are so fast that you are beyond the confines of time, and in theory, you could travel forward or backwards through time with raw speed alone, and potentially arrive before you even leave. In addition, being able to comfortably operate and move in such a space itself, like white space, is absolutely immeasurable speed without a doubt. This is just, again, incomprehensibly beyond what I've just previously described in Secret Rings. But for some reason, I have seen it said that this feat only applies when he's running through erased time, which I find to be absolutely preposterous. There's no evidence to suggest that he couldn't do this anyway, and he's literally stated to, accelerate through time. So I would definitely just hand wave this away. It's a really weak argument. And besides, this isn't even the only time Sonic has been shown to be this fast. In Sonic Forces, I'm so sorry. In Sonic Forces, Sonic is chucked all the way into null space. Null space, according to Dr. Eggman, is a closed-off space where absolutely nothing exists. Basically like white space. And yet it was a simple matter for Sonic to hook up a double boost and run straight out of it. Not just even run through it, which is already immeasurable speed, but run out of it. The Japanese version, the original version, goes even further than this. The translation, roughly, is it's a world of nothingness sealed off from every dimension created by the Phantom Ruby. So, yeah. Immeasurable Speed Sonic is incredibly consistent, and it's just really impressive seeing how many speed tiers Sonic has gone through in his modern run. And now he's so fast that most of fiction can't really even dream of touching him. Very fitting for the fastest thing alive. Speed is certainly one thing, but Sonic isn't lacking in the power department either. Now, I'm really glad that I've already gone over the modern Sonic scaling above Adventure era Supersonic stuff, because it makes this part really easy. In Sonic Rush, the Chaos Emeralds made up half the power required, alongside the Soul Emeralds, to merge Sonic and Blaze's separate dimensions together, which Tails stated would cause everything to disappear eventually. This is actually beyond universal. This is actually what we would call low multiversal, and I've also heard it called multi-universal. Basically, in essence, this means Sonic has the raw attack potency required to destroy 2 universes. He probably doesn't have the area of effect to do so, but it just means that that's the level of energy that he is striking with, which is, again, absolutely nuts. And we can actually make this more consistent as well. In Sonic and the Secret Rings, the second time I've mentioned this game, yeah, it has a lot of good stuff in it for scaling, Sonic defeats Eraser Jin after he'd absorbed half of the Arabian Nights. Keep in mind that this game has the main reality of the Arabian Nights and the Night Palace. The Night Palace is very consistently treated as its own reality from the Arabian Nights, as I'm showing you on screen here. And for further exposition, I also want to read this passage from the Sonic and the Secret Rings manual, which I'm actually looking at right now. Yep, I've done the homework, I've got the guide right here, where Eraser Jin's profile basically says he quickly builds his power by defiling the story of the book in order to ultimately rule the real world. This could potentially upscale to 3 universes, as indeed it was his actual plan to do so, and he may not have been able to break out due to the restrictions of the book. However, based on the fact that he was kind of needing the world rings to do this, I would probably dismiss this. Still, very impressive, and, you know, defiling is a pretty strong word for what happened to the Arabian Nights by Eraser Jin, and yet Sonic absolutely trashed him. If that isn't extraordinary enough, Sonic has considerably outgrown this to the present day, as it's actually said that Sonic trains and gets stronger all the time, which is something I will detail later in Powers. It's honestly his most impressive ability of his base form. In Sonic Forces, yes, I know I'm mentioning that game again, but yes, it does have some great stuff, deal with it. Sonic gets absolutely destroyed by Infinite at the beginning of the game. When Eggman talks about Infinite, he basically talks about every humiliation that he's ever faced by Sonic, and that he's going to use Infinite to return it 1,000-fold. And apparently, in the Japanese, this is actually 1 trillion. Yeah, 1 trillion. Okay, it might be hyperbole, and honestly, it probably is. But either way, both of these kind of just show a level of power incomprehensibly above anything that Sonic has faced before. And yet, despite sitting, kind of doing nothing in the Death Egg for 5 months, Sonic eventually comes back and absolutely destroys Infinite later on in the game, really showing Sonic's accelerated development in full swing. And yet again, more on that later. So, the current rundown of what we've discussed is that this blue rodent has the attack potency to destroy at least 2 universes and has immeasurable speed as of Sonic Generations and beyond. Like, seriously, nothing to scoff at. We're really talking about power and speed just that can solo a lot of fiction on its own. But Sonic isn't just power and speed, he's also got some really nice abilities to go along with it, as you probably expect with a character that has had so many appearances to this day. His rings, for one, are actually a power. They kind of function as a form of damage transferal. Basically what this means is that Sonic losing rings allows him to survive levels of power that he normally shouldn't be able to. For example, he's been splatted by the Time Eater and survived. He's been thrown into a mountain by Giganto and also survived that. Both enemies that needed Super Sonic to combat. Now, we didn't have confirmation of this for sure until Sonic Frontiers in Final Horizon. In this, we see an enhanced Super Sonic fight Supreme possessed by the End and get knocked out of his enhanced super form. He then takes visibly several hundred rings worth of damage and is able to survive this attack in his base form. Yes, I repeat, in his base form, thanks to his ring store. So you can knock out Sonic, but killing him if you're a similar level of power to him is pretty much not going to be possible because of this. It's also shown that having more rings increases his stats, for example, in Sonic Riders. In Frontiers, when his rings are maxed out, he gains power boost, making him even faster than before. Sonic can also restore broken time and space with speed alone, as I detailed in the speed section for Sonic Generations. This is also an extreme form of non-physical interaction. I mean, he's literally interacting with non-existence to bring it into existence. Meaning he can fight characters that have weird kind of physiology. For example, like nobodies from Kingdom Hearts would actually get hit by Sonic. There are also numerous occasions in his classic appearances of tagging opponents that are non-physical. For example, the boos in Sandopolis 2 can actually be hurt by Sonic and dissipate. A quite frankly mimetic power of Sonic's modern run is his indomitable willpower, which is kind of just shown off in basically every game it seems. In Secret Rings, Sonic is afflicted by the Arrow of Judgment, which towards the end of the game basically brings him to his knees, and yet he was still capable of easily fighting and defeating Eraser Jin. Chip in Sonic Unleashed said that Sonic was too strong to lose himself. This is despite the fact he had literal Dark Gaia depression-causing energy in his body, which caused the entire planet to go into despair when Dark Gaia reached his perfect form. Sage questioned his willpower on Raya Island while Sonic was basically being ripped apart by cyber corruption. Even the literal End said Sonic's courage never wavered, and he was literally watching Sonic get decimated by cyber corruption earlier in the game. His enhanced senses and acrobatics are a given, but I do want to mention them. Pretty self-explanatory. Anytime we see Sonic moving, he's incredibly aware of what his body's doing and how best to land, etc., and use his momentum. Sonic can also amplify his insane speed even further with Spin Dash, Boost, V-Maximum Overdrive, etc. Sonic's boost was actually calculated by Laser Precision, nice name, to be roughly 8 times faster than his usual speed. This was done using Sonic Unleashed with the SPD values that are provided at checkpoints, which is just outside of regular game mechanics and is therefore valid to calculate the speed of Sonic's boost. Sonic also has some Toon Force powers. He kind of constantly breaks the fourth wall. If you don't move, he kind of looks at the player. He also has some strange regen. We've seen him get flattened and then just return to normal. But there have also been other instances where being flattened has not been so kind to him and resulted in an instant death. On a more kind of consistent note, Sonic can pull objects like Chaos Emeralds from Hammer Space. He doesn't really have pockets, does he? He can also travel and move normally in spaces like White Space and Null Space, as I detailed, which is considerable considering there's literally no regular matter to even be moved on. He also has a really dangerous power of regeneration negation, where classic Sonic defeated Chaos Zero so utterly that Chaos Zero couldn't even reform. Now, this last little bit on Sonic's powers will be for Sonic Frontiers, where he gained a ton of extra stuff. Perhaps the most powerful of these is Psyloop, which allows him to replenish his own rings for abusing his own damage transferal and getting power boost or increasing his stats. He can use Psyloop to shatter enemy guards and pop them into the air, and he can also use them to telekinetically grab objects. The most extreme example was when Supersonic Psylooped Knight's sword and cut him in half with it. He can also use Parry as of Frontiers, which also slows down the enemy if they're parried, which has only rare exceptions. For example, Giganto isn't affected by this, but even Wyvern wasn't immune to this effect and gets horribly staggered by a parry. We've seen some instances in the past of Sonic using energy projection, but he has quite a few in Sonic Frontiers, including Sonic Boom and Cross Slash. I hope that gives you a good rundown of Sonic's powers, but I really want to put a bow on this by describing his most remarkable power of all: accelerated development. There are just so many examples of Sonic becoming far stronger and faster in no time flat, and I hope that I've demonstrated that in the speed and AP sections where we've seen his growth in real time. In Sonic Colors DS, there are many instances of a point being made about how quickly Sonic grows. He also, in this game, quickly learned ninjutsu, of all things, to the point where SBO was extremely impressed with the rate of his growth. He got absolutely stomped by Infinite, then proceeded to destroy him later on. And, of course, the very famous example of Sonic and Shadow Generations, where we see Sonic and Shadow take on opponents like Perfect Chaos and the Metal Overlord that once required super forms to beat, and having a generally very easy time with them. Finally, I'm going to detail one of my favourite Sonic feats of all time, and really just showing how extreme his accelerated development is. In the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, which, yes, is canon, Sonic is confronted with his ultimate opponent. That's right, a door. Sonic takes a look at this door, he thinks maybe a spin dash could break it down, then doesn't even want to try. He's like, nah, there's no way I could destroy the door, this is going to take a lot of time to break this door down. A few minutes later, Barry, the protagonist of the story, gives Sonic some encouragement, basically just saying, you can do it, Sonic. And in an incredible display of rapid development, he one-shots the door that he was completely incompetent to try and even put a dent in just minutes earlier. Yeah, it's hilarious and absolutely extraordinary. So what do we have? We have a multi-universal Sonic who is faster than time itself, with a myriad of extremely good abilities to boot. However, absolutely none of this compares to Super Sonic in the modern era, who I'm going to detail now. Going over speed for Super Sonic is extremely easy, so I'm going to start with attack potency. We're going to begin this section with Sonic Generations. In Generations, we see some very odd, suspect stages, including Crisis City and Stardust Speedway's Bad Future, of all things. Neither of these two stages should exist, and in fact, they don't exist. They are entirely non-existent. And this is even further confirmed in Shadow Generations, where Mephiles' entire plan fighting Shadow is to restore himself to the timeline, and basically just says he wants to exist, which is actually a really impressive feat of intelligence for him to even know that he's non-existent to begin with. In essence, what this means is that the Sonicverse has an additional temporal axis above the regular one, which is kind of a form of hypertime, kind of keeping track of events that have even been erased from existence. Considering Solaris's and the Time Eater's temporal natures, this has huge implications for Super Sonic's scaling, and considering that the Time Eater is actually capable of slowing Super Sonic down in the infinite tunnel dimension, and yes, this Super Sonic does indeed scale above Sonic's immeasurable speed base form, it is actually a pretty huge deal. But we can go even further than this. There is a lot of evidence for an additional spatial dimension in the Sonicverse, if not even more. I'm going to start with the imaginary world, which is something I've only recently come across. It's a place where all dreams from other dimensions assemble and become real, and apparently all of these dreams represent separate universes, and this is an infinite 4D space. There is also implication that the ancients used it to store cyberspace, so their legacy would not be forgotten. Even if I discount Imaginary World, it doesn't really affect the scaling, it's just more substantiating evidence for what I'm about to come to. If the Imaginary World is indeed like this, this would absolutely be beyond the regular multiverse, where Tails on Tails' Tube, of all things, states that there are possibly infinite realities. Further evidence for an additional spatial dimension is the end of time dimension, where the Time Eater resides at the end of Generations. This is so far away from even white space that it was required to have the Chaos Emeralds to unlock the portal to get there. Solaris is also noted as being super dimensional in nature or above regular dimensionality. Whatever way you slice it, it all comes together to provide very strong evidence of an additional spatial dimension on top of the regular multiverse. In total, this means we have 2 temporal axes and at least 4 spatial dimensions, giving us a ludicrous 6th dimensional supersonic. Absolutely unfathomable. It's hard to even imagine what this means, and this really blew my mind when I was really looking into it. However, the evidence for it is just so consistent. This would apply most poignantly to Solaris and the Time Eater, who Supersonic was capable of defeating, with a classic version of himself, or Shadow and Silver in their super forms as well. Now, before I go on to anything else, I have to debunk this very strange notion that's made about Supersonic in the present day. Basically, how this story goes is that they treat the Time Eater as a creation of Eggman, which it isn't. He kind of just weaponized it. They say that Infinite is above the Time Eater, and therefore Base Sonic is like 6th dimensional or something. And then therefore Supersonic is a dimensional multiplier, and therefore Supersonic is like 8 or 9D, and I've seen some people say it's as high as 12D. My advice for this is stop. You need an insane amount of evidence for claims above 4D plus, because we don't actually know what it looks like. We have absolutely no way of quantifying the difference between these tiers in real life, and this is the same between destroying 2, 3, or 4 universes. Just because you're twice as strong, that doesn't mean you go from 2 to 4 universes. It just means you're stronger in the 2 universe tier. Like, this is the thing. We just don't know. The only proof that you can use is an extreme, holistic amount of evidence for your claim. For example, if it was really said in like every guidebook ever in the modern day, and everyone was saying it, that Supersonic was like a dimensional multiplier, fine, maybe I'd be able to accept it. But the thing is that this is just not consistent. Supersonic barely ever appears in the modern run unless it's for extremely powerful opponents. And Eggman really hasn't been able to make anything, like just with his own tech specifically, that's been able to match it. And no, the Time Eater just does not count, very simply. And just finally, for this dimensional multiplier argument, even if I gave it maximum benefit of doubt, as I said, how do you know the difference between 4D and 6D is the same between 6D and 8D? You just don't know unless it's specifically stated it's the same in verse. Sorry, I really had to note on this. Back to the normal video. With AP out the way, I'm going to very quickly detail speed, and I do mean quickly because it's incredibly simple with Supersonic. He's just even higher into immeasurable speed than his base form. He fought Solaris, who is literally a god, and was going to pretty much destroy all timelines, as well as the Time Eater, who can actually slow down Supersonics as well, and exist unhindered in the time that it utterly destroyed. Nevertheless, Supersonic is unfathomably beyond the speed of his base form. He would actually be immeasurable speed on 2 temporal axes because of the caliber of opponents he's fought. This has serious implications for any versus matchup that Supersonic would end up in. It would mean that if you had, say, baseline immeasurable speed, you would look motionless compared to Supersonic. Yeah, it's that bad. Supersonic also has an incredible suite of hacks. Now, I really am being terse with this. The Chaos Emeralds have a lot of powers in of themselves, and there's a lot of archetypal implications for the nature of their powers and therefore Supersonic's powers. But I will go over as much as I can and what I feel is appropriate. He can fly. Yeah, I think we knew that. Supersonic has infinite stamina, courtesy of the Chaos Emeralds, which are stated numerous times to have infinite energy. Base Sonic has extraordinary stamina anyway, for example his Arrow of Judgment feat and the Cyber Corruption feats, but, you know, infinite stamina. Supersonic is also well known for his invulnerability, but invulnerability isn't a real power because it would imply no limits fallacy. Like, are you saying that, oh, nothing can damage Supersonic's body whatsoever? Yeah, I mean, there has to be something that can damage it eventually if you throw enough power at it. So it's more like immutability. It just makes him extremely hard to damage in usual circumstances. However, there are characters who can actively damage Supersonic and cause him to lose rings. For example, Dark Gaia's laser can cause Supersonic to lose rings. The End Supreme, who I mentioned earlier, knocked Sonic fully out of an even stronger variant of his form. So yeah, it is good power, but it's not infallible. But in any case, it's shown that high amounts of Chaos Energy can provide massive resistance to regular damage. In Shadow the Hedgehog, his Hero Shadow and Dark Shadow power-ups are entirely immune to most sources of damage. So still very impressive, just no limits. A very dangerous power that Supersonic has access to is power nullification, which is done by willing away one's ability to fight. This is actually how he dealt with Perfect Chaos. He just made him inert and completely incapable of violence. This is extremely dangerous, and you kind of would need like infinite willpower or like something like that to stop him from succeeding with this. And like, this is an instant win if he hits you with this. And speaking of empathic related powers, the Chaos Emeralds and thereby super forms become even stronger with positive emotion. Blaze states that they turn your thoughts directly into power. Tails stated in Sonic Adventure that the real power of the Emeralds was positive, so despite Perfect Chaos absorbing all the negative energy from them, the Chaos Emeralds were not fully depowered and Sonic still transformed into Supersonic. And yeah, on this note, I should just mention that every single power of the Chaos Emeralds is of access to Supersonic as long as he's aware of it. Chaos Control, as an example, which he learnt on the fly, and this is a form of time manipulation and time stop that's so fundamental that Shadow could use it in white space of all things. He was actually planning to freeze Maria and Gerald in time. It goes beyond game mechanics for that reason, and this is really dangerous because even characters who are immune to time stop or have baseline immeasurable speed will actually get affected by Chaos Control. They will not be able to negate it. Chaos Emeralds are also frequently shown capable of restoration. Perfect Chaos was quelled of its fury, a corrupted Mother Wisp was returned to normal. Even the destruction of all of time by the Time Eater, it was a simple matter for him and classic Supersonic to restore reality to what it once was before. The Chaos Emeralds have also been shown to be capable of conceptual destruction, notably of time. Mephiles and Iblis used the Chaos Emeralds to reform into Solaris, and Eggman stated that Solaris was going to collapse time into nothingness in last story. Yeah, insane power. If that wasn't enough, Sonic in his super form is also implied to be acausal, since he can destroy Solaris, who was stated by Eggman to be in the past, present, and future all at once. In the Japanese version of Frontiers, the End states that all dreams and life forms must end, and there is no escape from this fate, only to be defeated regardless. And even more interesting, and this was quite fascinating when I was looking into this, is when the End was incredibly low on health, it stated that something was about to happen, something transcending law and time, questioning if it might be the beginning of evolution itself. This is just absolutely nuts. I mean, you can make your own implications about just how fundamental the powers of the Chaos Emerald and Supersonic are, just based on this. Supersonic also has even stronger regeneration negation. Solaris, you know, literally omnipresent through time god, had its body permanently damaged by a combination of Supersonic, Super Shadow, and Super Silver, and eventually it was defeated and its body entirely destroyed. Sonic, as I said earlier, gained a ton of new combat powers in Frontiers, and some of them make his super form even more drunk. In Phantom Rush, he's seen making many constructs to attack with. Psyloop is even stronger in super form, allowing him to make extremely powerful binds, including chains or even outright impalement to trap the titans that he was fighting. And this also allows him to increase his damage output by a considerable amount as well while they're trapped. There's so much more, but I hope you get the idea. Supersonic's powers are genuinely absurd, and so many of them are just instant win abilities, and a lot of them make him just really hard to fight. But we're not quite done with Supersonic. I do want to briefly detail Starfall Supersonic, or Cyber Corruption Supersonic, who appeared in Sonic Frontiers Final Horizon. This is Supersonic's hidden power, achieved by fully weaponizing his own cyber corruption to reach his absolute peak. In the main story of Frontiers, both Supreme, piloted by Sage, and Supersonic are needed to fight the end effectively. In Final Horizon, Supreme is weaponized by the end, and Supersonic can't really do anything meaningful to it. But after powering up, he really puts the hurt on this empowered Supreme, and the end really gets only one meaningful moment against him in the form of a gigantic energy ball. His parry becomes even more dangerous, becoming perfect parry, allowing it to reflect even more attacks than before. He also just becomes really cool for no reason I can see whatsoever, but I love it and I'm here for it. Even more dangerous than this already massive Titan scale power up to an already beyond 6D super form is the fact that he can push it even further, weaponizing cyber corruption to its absolute limit, which totally annihilated the end so thoroughly that it couldn't even explode and just kind of fizzled out. I mean, sure, he was basically battered and bruised after this and incapable of fighting, but still. Given Sonic's constant improvement over time, I think the conclusion from this is fairly clear. Starfall Supersonic is the most powerful character in the entire series. Period. Providing I've not missed some random god up in the sky. But there's just one more thing I want to cover before we put a bow on this video, which is Sonic's hugely underrated intelligence. He uses his speed and movement basically perfectly, is capable of traversing any kind of terrain, any environment. It's not just that he's fast, but how incredibly well he uses his speed. In the intro of Sonic Unleashed, we see him basically in lore-accurate mode, dismantling an entire egg fleet with just showing unbelievable mastery of his movement. He's also a prodigy at basically any martial art he even touches. For example, he mastered ninjutsu, he mastered swordplay in the Black Knight. In the Black Knight, he mastered swordplay so quickly he got bored, as stated in the Japanese version of Black Knight, where in literally his first outing as well, Melina is saying he could be a true knight. He then faces several well-experienced knights in succession, defeats all of them, and eventually takes out King Arthur himself. The manual of Black Knight also flat out says he will become one of the greatest knights of all time, someone unlike anyone King Arthur has ever seen before. And for good measure, in Sonic Unleashed, he also just randomly mastered Kung Fu in just 2 missions in Chunnan. As recently as Frontiers Final Horizon, we see the Ancient's greatest warriors give praise to Sonic. The Ancients are super genius intellectuals who created all of cyberspace and supersonic level titans. Like, we're talking about warriors who have this intellectual base. One of them was even left utterly baffled by Sonic's ability to overcome the Titans, and later stated that he had limitless potential. Master Zik was absolutely bewildered by his skills. The Egg Dragoon, the Ultra Hyper Prototype 1, was actually created with years of research into Sonic's movement patterns, the, quote, absolute pinnacle of mad science. Clearly, this had no bearing on Sonic, who dismantled it twice, yes, twice, and once without even having his regular body that he was accustomed to fight it with. Since it appears that I like a hilarious feat, Orbot states in Team Sonic Racing's cutscenes that Eggman has lost 227,000 times to Sonic. As hilarious as this is absolutely not possible. Even assuming they fought once a week, they would be fighting for 4,350 years, and ain't none of you telling me that they've been alive for that long, like seriously now. However, I do think there is a broader point to be made from this, the disparity between Eggman and his greatest nemesis. This super genius doctor has insane intelligence feats, including the creation of Sage, an AI who can restore her own code even after being destroyed, can possess titans, and fully integrate into cyberspace. He weaponized the Time Eater with his tech. He could drain the Chaos Emeralds dry, create multi-stellar weapons, and yet he loses to this Hedgehog constantly. When you put it like that, it looks a lot less bad for Eggman. It's just the caliber of the opponent he is constantly forced to face. Sonic isn't just a hit things till they win guy, he is a hardened warrior, a prodigy at everything he touches, and it's shown time and time again, there is a reason he constantly defeats the Doctor. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I didn't expect it to be this long, but yeah, my goodness, there is a lot to go over for the Blue Blur. I'm hoping to do more videos like this. I'm hoping to also do narrative analysis videos, so if that interests you, you know, hit the big old subscribe button and stay along for the ride. Yeah, it's just going to be fun to enact some of the ideas I've had in the bank for a while and just see where they go. But having said that, till next time.